everyone. We're glad that you're here and joining our session this afternoon. We're going to start in about 2 minutes. Enjoy the music. Stand up and stretch if you need to. Glad you're here. Glad to see everybody coming in. Make sure you're comfortable. Maybe you've got something to write on. Maybe you've got something to snack on. We're really excited to spend this time with you. Hadley and I have been talking about this for a while. Looking forward to this time with you. Can we go ahead and disable the waiting room and let everybody in? All right, just in case folks are still working their way in. All right.
Well, welcome to the Ohio Statewide Family Engagement Leadership Summit. We are glad that you could join us on this day of professional learning meant to take family, school, community partnership to the next level. My name is Sarah Deshawn, and I will be this workshop's moderator. This workshop is Workshop 3, a multi-tiered strategic approach to family engagement. If you have any questions or concerns or technical issues, please message me privately in the chat. To ensure that all get the most out of today, we ask that all participants turn off their webcams and microphones. If you have questions for the presenter, please use the chat feature and I will pass them along at an appropriate time. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Be sure to use the hashtag Breakthrough22 to share your thoughts. The Ohio Family Engagement Leadership Summit proudly welcomes Dr. Barbara Boone and Hadley Bachman from the Ohio Statewide Family Engagement Center. Welcome.
Well, welcome to our session, Multi-Tiered Strategic Approach to Family Engagement, and I hope you'll use the chat to introduce yourself. Let us know where you're from. I know everybody enjoys doing that, and I know in some of our larger sessions we didn't have the chat capacity, but we do here. So please use it to talk to one another during this time. So I want you to know that later in the presentation, we're going to be offering you time to practice the approach that we're sharing with you today. So we're setting up breakout rooms, and the breakout rooms are focused on different topics or different grade levels, and you're going to be able to pick. So, however, if you would like to work with a group of colleagues, maybe you have a group of folks here and you're all from the same school or the same district and you want to work together, please message Sarah Deshawn, our moderator, so you can private message her in the chat and she'll make a room for you. And you'll know that you've got a room set aside for you. So, and also I want you to know, we really want you to stay and join the breakout rooms. So if you've got some people have a little fear of breakout rooms, got to kind of tone it down. These are going to be friendly, fun, good learning time breakout rooms. So please commit to stay here with us and join the breakout rooms. So, and I'm going to jump in here, keep going here just for a second and introduce myself. My name is Barbara Boone, and I get to direct and lead the world's best team here at the Ohio Statewide Family Engagement Center at The Ohio State University. And we work with school districts and schools and the State Department of Education and others around promoting and providing assistance for family and community engagement in education. We do that in many different ways, but we also like to work with families and to create tools for families so that they can be empowered and inspired and encouraged and advocate for their own children.
And hello, good morning, or good afternoon, rather. My name is Hadley Bachman. I am a family engagement researcher here at the Ohio Statewide Family Engagement Center. In my role, I help design and facilitate professional learning opportunities for coaches, school leaders, teachers, and families. And I collaborate to create our News and Guidance, which is a monthly e-white paper offering research-based strategies and tools for school and district leaders. I am also a former teacher and school administrator, as well as a mom to a public school 8th grader. So I've experienced various roles in family engagement and practice, and I'm so happy to be here with you today. So we want to open by asking a simple question. What is an engaged family? So we're going to use an app called Mentimeter. So you can answer in 3 ways. You just take your pick, which is easiest for you. So we all know QR codes probably by now. You can use your phone to scan the QR code on the screen. You could also go to menti.com and enter in the code that you see there on the screen, or you can simply click on the link that Sarah's posted in the chat. And then from there, it's going to ask for 3 words to describe an engaged family. So kind of what pops in your mind right away when you think about an engaged family. We're going to see what ideas rise to the top for us as a group. So I want to give you a few minutes to get your answers in, and then I'm going to pull up a screen to share them.
Okay, we're thinking about an engaged family. Something that pops into mind.
What comes to mind?
What comes to mind?
Give you about 1 more minute to get those ideas in. Okay, let's see what people are starting to say. So in a Mentimeter, as you probably know, the words get bigger as more of us have said them. So this idea of being involved and active and informed, those are some of the things that are coming up a lot for us. Knowledgeable is a thought that's coming up a lot. Empowered, interested, we're seeing that. Active, input, so maybe giving input in decisions involving their children. Invested, helpful, that's interesting. I wonder, helpful to their child, helpful to the school, helpful to whom? That leaves me with a question. I see that some other ideas that are coming up and maybe written in different ways, but communicative, communicators, communication, communicating. So this idea of, that an engaged family is one who communicates, one who's actively communicating with the school. I see this idea that families show up that are engaged. I also see some ideas about leadership written in a couple different ways. Connected is an idea that came up quite a bit. Curious was one that's pretty small, but is an interesting idea. Coming to school events, trusting, accountability, and then some ideas about relationships, loving, included. So thank you very much for joining me on that today. So I want to share our learning goals today. So at the end of the workshop, we hope you will be able to say, I can apply the MTSS model to develop expanded homeschool program partnerships to support learning and healthy development. So you maybe are familiar with the MTSS model in other ways in schools, or maybe you've attended a workshop with us before in the MTSS approach to family engagement. So we're going to really talk about how we can use that to develop these expanded homeschool program partnerships. We're going to do that in a couple ways. First, we want to be able to describe different tiers of support for family engagement. We want to be able to determine decision indicators for revising and adapting practices to center families' needs and preferences. We're hoping that you'll feel confident planning for 5 roles for families in a multi-tiered system of support model. And then finally, we hope that you'll be able to evaluate and then self-evaluate in the future plans for multi-tiered systemic approach to family engagement.
So we know that children succeed when families, schools, and communities work together. Helping our kids succeed is a lot like working at NASA's mission control. Just like a space launch needs astronauts, scientists, mathematicians and other people, all to work together over a long period of time. We need schools, families, and communities to work together to help student learning take off. Everyone has a part to play if we want to have that successful launch. And it's not just up to teachers. It's not just up to families. The most successful launches of our students come from when we coordinate, when we communicate, as you all said in our Mentimeter, when we listen to each other, when we value and include the cultures of our families, when we build that trust with each other, and when we learn from one another. And even when things don't go as planned, we work together to get it right. So together we're going to collaborate. We're going to talk about that collaboration too, how we plan for that, like mission control, to help launch our kids to success. And it's really always amazing when you see a rocket like that take off. The factors that work against it, like gravity. And we think about the gravity that holds our kids back, right? Whether it be systemic racism, whether it be a disability, whether it be lack of resources in their family, whether it be a school that's not in good condition, what are all those things that can hold students back? But there's also that fuel. We've heard from our parent leaders. We've heard from the passion around families and communities and excellent educators who work tirelessly to support student learning. So today we're going to share with you a way of planning that's going to ignite that collaboration with families of all students. Now, we also know that regular ongoing family engagement benefits students in many, many ways. This is not disputed. There's just lots of research over a long period of time behind that. What's exciting and sometimes not noticed is the multiple benefits to teachers. We want to highlight that here. At a cursory glance, some may worry that overloading teachers with responsibilities, increasing stress in an already very demanding role. But let's bring to light a few benefits that are ordinarily out of sight. So we know that when families, schools engage with one another in regular, ongoing way, teacher benefits include increased confidence in promoting the academic achievement of their students, increased efficacy for being able to assist and work with families. A sense of trust in families develops for teachers, as well as the academic performance of their students improves. Their students have improved behavior, and teacher job satisfaction increases and retention as well. So these benefits really demonstrate in very concrete terms how the right policies to support teachers, the right practices around communication, support from teachers and for families can help students and then everyone in the system, teachers too.
So I want to start with just a little theoretical background about how family engagement happens and what it does for students. Hoover Dempsey and Sandler created a model for family engagement. It starts with the pre-involvement of families that creates the groundwork for family engagement that launches student achievement. Pre-involvement factors are the factors that contribute to families deciding or having the capacity, even in the first place, to engage with the school. So why do families engage? Pre-involvement factors really fit into three main categories: personal motivators, perceptions of invitations for involvement, and life context variables. To look at personal motivators, first, they're motivated to engage when their notion of what it means to be a mom, a dad, or a caregiver is to engage in the way the school is inviting them to be engaged. This is called parental role construction. So an example of role construction would be if a dad is reading to his child every night at bedtime because that's just really the way he defines being a dad. His own dad read to him, and he's just always imagined himself reading to his own child. And if this matches the kindergarten teacher's expectation of parents reading to their children every night, then that's, parents' role construction for involvement, really motivating him to get involved that way. They're also motivated when they feel like they can make a positive difference for their child when they engage the way that the school invites them to. And this is really particularly powerful for me. It can be a powerful motivator or a powerful demotivator. So this is called parental efficacy. So an example of parental efficacy for involvement is a mom who believes when she checks in with her middle schooler about homework every day, that the child will respond and then be motivated to stay on task. So it's really that you feel like that confidence that you can help your child succeed in school. To look at perceptions of invitations to be involved, they feel invited and welcomed when they receive general engagement opportunities from the school, like an school invitation to an open house night. I've seen a lot of invitations for curriculum nights recently, or invitations into whole school messaging systems. I know I receive invitations to join to make sure that I'm connected to my daughter's Power School. That's general school invitation. Another is feeling invited when they receive a specific teacher invitation. So that's a specific teacher invitation is when a teacher would maybe contact a parent to share more personally an activity that a parent could do at home to help their child's progress, or to reach out and say, it'd be really important for me if you could come to this open house. I really am excited to meet you. That's a very powerful invitation if you have that personal connection. And then finally, families also feel invited when they receive a specific invitation from their child. This is also really powerful. When the child brings home a letter from the classroom teacher about needing chaperones for something, or about that open house night, and asks the grandfather to join the class trip or to come to the open house night, that's really powerful as well. And then looking at life context variables. Life context supports their engagement when they know how and have the skills to help their child with academics and social emotional learning. So an example of having the knowledge and skills to engage is when a caregiver understands maybe how slope is being taught in pre-algebra, and has the skills to answer the child's questions. I don't know about you, but things in school are taught a little differently than they were when I was in school. And so just having that, knowledge and skills to be able to support my child at home. Or when messages from the school are sent in a family's primary language, that also supports parental knowledge and skills for engagement. Life context also supports engagement when they have the time and energy. This might seem obvious, but there's a lot of things that the school can do to support this. So an example of having time and energy to engage is when the school plans events at times and in ways that are convenient to parents and caregivers. Maybe varying the time of events so that parents who work at different shifts during the day can attend. And then life context also supports engagement through a family's culture. And that really talks a lot about whether or not the family's culture and the school's expectations around engagement match up. So families and culture includes the expectations a family has for how adults should be addressed, or the ways that families should be involved at a school, the ways that they should be addressed when they come to a school, who should be contacted, which caregivers should be contacted even. So perhaps if there's a culture where the father is typically the one that would be engaging with teachers, if that's a mismatch with the U.S. dominant expectation that a mother is typically the one that's involved more in a child's education, that might be a mismatch for engagement. So those three main factors, personal motivators, perceptions of invitations to be involved, in life context, these interact to influence a parent or caregiver's decision to engage with the school. You might notice something missing, the idea that parents who get involved are the parents who care. We maintain that all families care about their children, but they may not all choose to engage with the school in the same way or the ways that we expect them to, which should not be interpreted as a lack of caring. Instead, consider these pre-involvement factors that we've discussed here as we proactively plan for how to promote family engagement for every family that launches the success of every student through a multi-tiered system of support.
All right. So today we're working together in this workshop to learn how this multi-tiered system of support approach will support your teamwork between schools and families and can be a force for improving equitable access and inclusion of families whom we may not be connecting with yet. So today we're considering this MTSS approach to family engagement with a broad focus. We want you to see that this approach can be used to plan for partnering families at really any level of school, for any student learning goal, for behavioral goals, for school improvement, really anything. It can be applied to special education, general education. This approach helps us consider all. So we no longer think of some families as hard to reach, but instead we plan for our own actions and strategies so we can support partnerships with all families. So today we're going to apply an MTSS approach to family engagement for many different goals. We're viewing this MTSS as a data-driven system to organize our family engagement interventions and supports so we can apply them planfully to maximize outcomes for students.
So today we're introducing a tiered approach to family engagement. Our goal is that all students not only have the opportunity, but can and do engage with the school through differentiated practices that meet the needs of each family. In this model, we characterize our practices, services, and supports into different tiers. which we then make available to families flexibly based on their needs in a given situation. So we want to be clear, we're not assigning families to tiers. Instead, we are planning proactively to adapt our approach to family engagement so that each family is supported. Families will need different levels of support at different times and in different situations. Barbara and I have found this to be true in our own families. Our model is expansive. The purpose is to widen our practices so that all families have opportunity. Tier 1 supports are the core and universal strategies that are linked to whole child supports. So Tier 1, this is the universal school or program-wide support systems for all families. Tier 1 establishes the school culture and communicates expectations for behavior and learning. So just like in Tier 1 instruction, if you use an MTSS model in your schools, effective universal strategies should meet the needs and preferences of most families. So at least 80% of the families in your school should be effectively engaged through Tier 1 strategies, or as a school, you should review and revise whether your approach at this tier is universal enough. Tier 2 supports are programs and strategies for groups of families. These are more tailored. They are for groups of families who need additional support or want to be engaged at a deeper level. So families receive tailored supports and strategies based on their situation that might be more intense or more frequent. We don't have a Tier 2 family, remember? We have Tier 2 family engagement as needed. So for Tier 2, you're really thinking about, are there groups of families that might have a common interest, a common preference that you maybe need to address that's beyond just what every single person might need in Tier 1, okay? And then Tier 3 supports are intensive. So this is for a very small number of individual families with unique situations that might want or need engagement beyond Tier 2. So Tier 3 strategies are intensive programs and strategies for families with highly individualized needs and preferences. The supports here are designed to meet the family's specific needs. And we encourage you, as you're thinking about this multi-tiered model, to not just think through a deficits lens, to also think about the strengths of your families. So thinking about families that have really specialized skills that might want to be engaged uniquely at a Tier 3 level as leaders in your school, that is also a Tier 3 strategy. So no matter what tier, the overall goal in our work with families is to develop expanded homeschool program partnerships to support learning and healthy development. So in a moment, we're going to be creating a robust multi-tiered strategic plan for family engagement. Our next step is then going to be determining when to change approaches. So once we have figured out what our Tier 1 and Tier 2 strategies and Tier 3 strategies around a particular topic might be, we need to think about when are we going to change approaches with a family or a group of families. So this might take the form of revising Tier 1 strategies if they're not universal enough, or by making different tiers of family engagement strategies available to select families in our school. We base these changes on something we call decision indicators. So decision indicators would come from data, from the school, from families, from students, or the community. If you were in our keynote presentation, there was some talk about equity audits. That's an example of a type of data that might give us data that would help us to change our approach. So for example, if the school is attempting something new, that might necessitate a change of approach. Or if something changes in the community, like a community organization closes, that might necessitate a change of approach for a group of families or an individual family, or maybe all families. If a family requests, so if we have family requests, groups of families or individual families, like if one family would like additional counseling services, they might need to move to Tier 3 strategy. Or if data shows a pattern of certain subgroups of students scoring disproportionately lower in an assessment, that might necessitate a change of approach, a change of support for their families. Our plan should identify decision indicators to give us a metric when current practices are not enough or not a good fit. This should be based on data, as I said. A common rule of thumb is that Tier 1 practices should reach at least 80% of families, as I said, or they're not universal enough. So if you are using an event-based for your tier 1, if you are only reaching 20% of families through an open house night, it might not be universal enough, and you might need to revise that approach. Changing levels may mean a change of intensity, so how deeply you're engaging, or a change of dose or frequency, how often, or it could be a total change of practice. So sometimes things aren't working. And sometimes it's not a matter of more intensity or more frequency. That's a mistake sometimes we make as schools. We just send the message more often in more different ways. And sometimes it's that the practice itself needs to change. We need to be adaptive and flexible to make sure that we're creating opportunity for all families to engage meaningfully. And then supports can be long or short term. So if a family needs or wants tier 3 family engagement strategies for a while, it might not need to be forever. So data needs to be monitored at regular intervals to determine whether families need more or less intensive family engagement opportunities. For example, if our goal is to promote family engagement to support student attendance, we might use absence rate threshold as an indicator to implement a tier 2 strategy, perhaps weekly phone calls with families of students frequently absent. However, if certain families stop answering their phones when the school calls, in other words, a rate of response drops, it's an indicator that families may either need a different tier 2 strategy or may need a more individualized tier 3 approach for a short time until the student's attendance rate improves. So our primary goal here is to be responsive and supportive, just like we would in a classroom in our instruction with our students. So we don't want to expect all students to just be taught one way and fit one mold. We also don't want to try to squeeze families all into one cookie cutter mold.
All right. Do we have a check-in poll? All right. We want to know how you're doing, how how you're feeling. How's your battery level? If you were a cell phone, what would it show? Are you at 100%? Or is your cup overflowing? Or is your battery down? Okay. Thank you all for jumping in and just participating and being a part of our learning group here. Hadley, I'm thinking that we're going to keep going. Mm-hmm. We've got some folks that are really charged up today. We've got some others. We recognize this. I have to admit, after being on and all the nervousness last night about being here with all of you today and not sleeping very well, it's great. I'm just energized to be here with you, and that's what I'm running on. I think when we're done here today, my battery will be low. But so we're going to keep going, recognizing and thanking you all for hanging in there. And if your battery's charged, I hope just relax and keep with us here. And the rest of us are going to just stay with us and know that, this isn't all up to you. We hope you can continue to enjoy this time with us. All right. Okay. So here we go. So what we want to do right now is talk a little bit about the roles for families. So this is not something we do without families, that any good multi-tiered system of supports is going to be with families. Families are going to be integrated into that. They're important to it. One is as initiators. Families who initiate in a multi-tiered system by requesting services, right? I need this for my child. I see several children might need this. They might alert the school to their child's needs, right? So this could be a parent saying, getting a hold of their child's teacher and saying, my son's really anxious to come to school. Like, he doesn't want to come because he's being bullied. Or a parent who requests that the school counselor might offer a group, a grief counseling group to some children because they, perhaps because of COVID or other reasons, right? So this is parents saying, we need this. It's not something that exists. They initiate it. Another is families are co-designers with us. There are team members. It could be individually for their own child's IEP meeting for special education. They might be on a PBIS team in their school. You might have, some schools have MTSS, multi-tiered system of support teams. Parents are great partners in that as well. They could be a part of leadership teams, but they also can co-design by giving feedback. to the school, and participating in small group meetings. Say a group of parents who meet with the principal to discuss ideas, because maybe the principal's thinking of this idea of a community garden, and so they meet together with families. Families also receive supports. It could be they need equipment for remote learning. They're asking for family counseling. They might need adaptive technologies for their student. They might need basic needs assistance. They might need help completing the FAFSA form for college with their kiddo. They might receive information and ideas about how to help their middle schooler navigate through the 5 different teachers they have now. So families receive supports. They're also providers of supports. Families read with their children, maybe to practice that reading fluency or their child's letter recognition. They might implement a reward system. They sit down with the teacher and the school, and they come together in a way they're going to be rewarding with their child for attending school and how they're working together with their classmates. They might also provide counseling their high school student around the importance of being in school, or maybe talking with their child about where you want to go after school, right? So they're providing support, but they're also evaluators. They offer a perspective that our school personnel just don't have. They can report on the goodness of fit. How did this work? Their satisfaction with it, their home experience with things, their recommendations for improvement around accessibility. Their feedback is important.
So we're going to get a little bit more active. So you've been real patient listening to Barbara and I, and now we get to work together and learn together and hopefully recharge the batteries that were at 25%. And those of you at 75%, which was the main group of you, we're going to hopefully charge you back up to 100%. So we're going to build an example multi-tiered system of support plan together. And we always love doing this because we literally build it live with you. So we have 3 common scenarios today, some initiatives that are going on here in Ohio and probably around the country as well. We want you to vote in chat on a scenario for which you'd most like to develop a multi-tiered family engagement plan. So you can vote by just putting a number in chat. So number 1 is a new reading curriculum. Number 2 is an anti-bullying initiative. Number 3 is a program to promote attendance. I am seeing just a tidal wave of 3s. Yes.
There have been a few others, and I want to see you as well. We have seen the 1s and 2s go by.
I see some 1s and 2s as well. That's right.
Yes.
I know that reading is on the top of as we heard from our superintendent this morning, reading is at the top of a lot of people's minds this year as well. I know that bullying is an ever-present issue for school leaders and engaging with families. Dr. Boone, I don't know if you've been watching the chat.
Yes, I'm saying 3 for today. We have to land on something.
Okay.
This has been our quickie vote. So we've talked about it. Now we're going to do it together. Let's pick number 3.
That, do you want to, as I'm pulling up the slides so I can get us ready for typing things in, do you want to talk about that question? What is the goal, the intended goal for students?
Yes, I do. Okay. So while Hadley's doing that, so together we're just going to make it a decision here and say, let's talk about a program to promote attendance. So we're going to think about developing a multi-tiered system of support, an MTSS plan for a program to promote attendance. Why would we do that? And when I say why, what is the goal for the students? That's where we want to stay focused. So in the chat, what would be a goal? Why have a program to promote attendance? And think about thinking about a measurable goal. You got an idea? Put it in the chat. Increase achievement. If students aren't in school, then they're not receiving those supports and interventions. Increase attendance and academic achievement. All right, Hadley, let's see here. We've got some of the why, increasing achievement. We're focusing on attendance. So we may have we've got some new messages coming in here. Students can't learn it. They're not in school. Academic achievement. Okay. So Hadley, let's put one up here. Folks are really diving into a lot of the why behind this. So our goal could be we want to increase attendance for students. Maybe we have a low attendance rate. We want to increase our student attendance by 40%. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that that's a good goal, and I like keeping the why as a foreground.
Yes.
That our purpose there, because that would be important to share with families as we co-design and evaluate. That gives us a metric. Did we promote that sense of belonging and promote academic achievement alongside, raising student attendance rate?
Yeah.
So I included all of those ideas there.
I think it's so important to know the why. You're absolutely right. We don't do it just because it's on the report card or it's compliance, right? We're doing it for a very important reason. Okay, so now we're really going to get busy in the chat. So I hope if you leaned in, that you'll stay there. Get your fingers on the keyboard, if you will. And we're going to write this plan together, and I'm going to guide us through that. So we've decided in our example, we're going to start planning together now. We've got our goal, our measurable goal here. So now let's practice how we're going to plan to engage all families toward this goal as well. So we want to be clear. Remember, we're not assigning families to tiers. Instead, we're planning proactively to adapt our approach to family engagement so that each family is supported. Families need different levels of support at different times and different situations. So we're going to build it from the bottom up, bottom row upwards. And each row starts with identifying needs and opportunities before we decide on how we're going to respond. So I want to recognize we are all doers here. We can all get things accomplished, get things done. But in this model, we focus on centering families first, learning about their motivators, their knowledge and skills and concerns before we decide our strategy. So tier 1 is that universal family engagement where we focus on all families, what they need, what opportunities all families want to have. Tier 1 strategies are proactive, right? They're preventative. They prevent problems and challenges. So what motivators or knowledge and skills or particular concerns might all families have about attendance? In the chat, what might be some of those motivations for families, what families know, what concerns or questions all families may have about attendance? Okay, now Nancy, I see you. That's a great idea. Let's jump to what families need. Let's start there. We're going to hang on to that though. So families might need, all families may need, all families want their kids to succeed. Okay, this is a real shift in thinking here that we're doing. So all families want their kids to succeed. All families want to know why it matters. All families need to know the attendance rules. All families want their children to be successful and socially accepted. Okay, let's go with that. Hadley, how do you feel about feel like we've captured that? And I'm moving us along here, and I hope you don't feel rushed, but I'm going to move us along because we're going to do this some more, but we want to kind of keep moving through this. Not a perfect plan, but an example. Like we're getting started here. Hadley, ready to move on?
I'm ready to move on.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so given these things, given that all families want their kids to succeed, all families want to know why attendance matters, all families want to know the rules, all families want their children to be socially accepted, what should we do? All right, what should we do? What should our response be to these families, these opportunities families need? Okay, we want to increase access to supports for attending, eliminating barriers. Let's think about some of those that might be all families. Remember, you're thinking about all the families in your schools. We want to be engaging and inviting. We want to set up a meeting. Now, I see one there with families that are struggling, but let's see. I don't know if all families are struggling. These are great ideas, but I want to keep us in this all families.
I really like Jen's comment there. Did you see that one?
Culturally,
the chat's moving quick.
It is moving quickly. Show how attendance influences academic success. Great. Share research. Let's put it in writing. Let's have an informational night in different languages to explain. District share that district strategic plan. Well, so I see here, these are those broad things everybody, I see translation, I see sharing the why, sharing research behind it, right? Meetings. Okay, and being present is really important. Thank you, Andrew, for that. And maybe developing a plan, all families. So maybe that's a part of it. So every family kind of gets, we talk to them about what's going to be your family's plan. We do that with all families. And we use plain language with everyone. Thank you for Denise. So important. Okay. I feel like we've got some good examples there, those universal examples. Hadley's still getting them recorded for us. But so we forced ourselves to do this. And I think as you take this back and use this yourselves, you're going to be the person saying, okay, wait, let's not go to solutions yet. Let's think about those common opportunities for families and those, what are those big things? Develop relationships so you develop trust, Rosemary. Great. Families developing goals. So, okay, so that's something we can do with all families. Ready to move? Hadley, did you have anything?
The only thing I'm adding that I'm not sure I saw in the chat, but I noticed that one of the needs that we wrote was that all families want to know the rules and laws. And so I'm writing in information about the rules and laws in ordinary and accessible ways. So often those rules and laws are very hard for families to understand, just speaking as a parent.
Great. Thanks for including that. And how to communicate with teachers is here. Right, it's not a one-way street with the communication. Families need information, but we also need to be hearing from them. All right, and helping families to think about maybe a backup plan too. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, great. Now let's think about tier 2. So these are what might be, some families will have some questions, not every family, but some families will have a particular interest or particular area that they are interested in. So tier 2 is where we plan for families within our school population who maybe need more intense, more frequent, or just plain different strategies than what we just planned. These families they're going to also have access to all those tier 1 supports. But remember, they're not tier 2 families, but rather we're thinking about families that might need more supports, have different questions. So let's think about these factors. What personal motivators, knowledge, skills, particular concerns might come from some groups of families beyond tier 1? Beyond tier 1, think about that. Okay, families who have different job hours, you're right. So we talked about having an event. So we have families who have different hours. We have families maybe whose languages we have not communicated in. We have some families who have transportation issues. Okay, so language, transportation, different hours, so not able to access at the time we schedule things. Okay, a newcomer who just new to the school, so new to this whole, well, how does attendance work, right? Okay, so families who might need, what do I do about after school? What about care before school? How does that work with attendance? Okay, when we talked about families with joint custody agreements or arrangements, how does that work? Okay, families who are houseless, families, right? We see the hours, transportation. Okay. Families who feel intimidated or unwelcome. I'm really glad you brought that up, Sarah, because that is a very real thing.
So I'm running out of space, so I'm going to move
this
on.
Good job. But I think I think that was so different than our first one. Our first one, we started solving it right away. This one, you all held back and you thought, wait, what my families need. So now, given what we've recorded here about jobs, about transportation, about being newcomers or language issues, okay, families with joint custody. Now, what is our response? And we're going to just quickly here, and we need to keep moving along.
So maybe let's take a couple of those as an example because we have a lot of really good ones. What might we be able to plan for families that have jobs hours different than the school hours? How might we be able to plan a supports and strategies for them to support attendance?
Virtual options. Thanks, Francis. We offer it virtually, re-record it. We could do it at a different time. Practice at the school. We could do a newcomer orientation. I think those are 3 really good ones that tie into some of those specific needs. After hours call line. Wonderful. Okay, so just in light of moving forward, I think we've all zeroed in on, because those ideas that you offered here, you tied right to those needs or opportunities that families may have. All right, so now let's jump to tier 3. Hadley, are you ready for us to go on
Yes,
to our
I
tier
added
3?
one that I had never heard before, which is a group walk to school with a lead parent. I love that that is bringing up leadership of parents, and I think that's such an important part of this, that we're starting to envision parents as how they can provide support to each other.
Wonderful, thank you. And yes, to have families sort of actively being a supporter in this, great. So tier 3 now. So now we're at the top here. This is where we plan for individual families within our school population who may need really highly individualized strategies for engagement. So these families, it really can be anyone, also have access to tier 1 supports. They would have access to these options here, like the virtual options and other things that we've talked about, the walk, the group walk. But what unique personal motivators, knowledge and skills, or particular concerns might individual families have in this scenario? So in the chat, really individualized needs or opportunities for. We've got it. Becky, Check and Connect is wonderful, but when would we use Check and Connect? Child is missing.
Nancy has a really great idea, and so does Patricia. Maybe we can take
extreme
those 2.
circumstance. Sure, we have sort of medically fragile children, or in a family circumstance, illness. How are we going to navigate that? When we have children who are missing a lot, medically fragile, maybe they're involved in the juvenile justice systems. We have families who are experiencing homelessness, right? So transportation, things that they may be dependent on at one point in time, they can't depend on any longer. It's got to be different. Families that are working multiple shifts here, mental health issues, anxiety.
So maybe we can take the 3 that I have there and think about some school responses.
So Hadley has extreme illness preventing attendance, missing in school a lot, and families experiencing homelessness. So focusing on those things, what can be our response, our supports? Focusing on extreme illness for the family or the child. Offer home visits. Thank you. All right. Got a kiddo who's missing a lot. Behavior intervention plans for medical health issues. A wellness check, Francis, which I think is like that home visit, maybe a different kind of home visit. Peer support from another family. Right, really wrapping around, maybe doing sort of a wraparound meeting with the school and other community resources to really tailor that to that family. Right, that connection, Shannon brought this as well, connecting them to resources. Okay. All right, and I'm talking about, and this may be social workers who are filling this role, who have that, it's in their role and their job description to provide this more intensive support. So I see now that we've done it. You've done it at every level, and I'm just so impressed. I think you are the quickest group ever to sort of jump to really stopping and identifying the family's needs and opportunities first, and then thinking about how do we meet those needs? How do we tailor what we do to that family-centered approach? Okay, so now let's jump in one more time and think about those family roles. So how could families be initiators in this role? We're just going to quickly move through. So thinking about, we're going to move quickly here, and I'm going to give some ideas too, but let me hear from you. How might families be initiators in this program to increase attendance? In the chat, let's hear from you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and give some ideas, and while you're writing in chat, I'm going to give ideas as well. Here we go. So families might initiate this by saying, my child recently was diagnosed with, leukemia. I don't know. I'm thinking of an extreme medical example, but their ability to be in school, their attendance, it's going to be extremely affected by that. It's definitely going to be a tier 3. The family comes to us and tells us though. So that family initiates that. They share the challenges that they're facing. Perhaps the transportation system the school's offering, the school wouldn't know, but the families know it's not working. All right, thank you for that. Let's jump to co-designers. How could families be a part of designing this? And I think the ability to share needs through a phone call, through a family survey, that is definitely ways that families are co-designing with us. All right. Receivers of support. Receivers of support. And, I see this Facebook group idea, talking with other parents, starting a Facebook group, dealing with the same issues. I would say that's providers. That's families stepping in and providing supports to other families. The PTA engaging and being part of co-designing. That would be a great thing for a PTA meeting or gathering to say, let's discuss attendance. What can be some solutions here? So what if, as receivers, how are families receiving here? I hear them receiving information from the school, receiving that printed information, the translated information, coming to a meeting, receiving that home visit. So families are definitely receiving. We have planned for families to be receivers of support from the school. And then quickly, let's think about, how do families give us feedback on this? What's working? What needs to be done? How do we hear from families about that? Does this fit? Does this work? I'm thinking about the child who's medically fragile. And I think if we say provide some, we're sending, assignments on, we're negotiating around how this child is going to attend or be, that maybe the family then report, we're going to check back in 2 weeks and see, how is this working? I love it. Patricia, scheduled check-ins, parent focus groups. All right, great. I think we've got something sort of in each area. And I love how you broke it down and you really see how those 5 areas are there. So now let's look at the change of levels. Do we have time here to do this, Hadley?
We do. We have about 2 more minutes on this slide.
All right, 2 minutes. Quick. 2 minutes. So how would we know we need to change in how much, that the intensity of what we're doing? So someone mentioned check and connect. How do I know that I need to now? So I'm going to start providing like a mentor in the school that's going to check with that student when they come in. I can't do it for all 600 kids in my school. How do I know who to do that for?
Shannon,
Okay.
do you need to go back to the triangle right now or after this slide?
Thank you. After this slide will be great. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. So I see Becky's here saying use data, attendance reports after 3 days of truancy. Thanks, Francis. Right. So we've got like an indicator. We've got when we reach here, we know we're going to, if this student has just been tier 1, now we're going to jump to our tier 2 intervention. Now we're going to jump to tier 3. Okay. Thank you. How about a change of dose? So that's just more of the same. So maybe we provided something to a parent in English, or maybe we are communicating with families. I'm sorry, not in this. That would be a bad example. What if we are communicating with families and we want to do it more frequently? Mona, great point. So how do I know I need to? So maybe we call when a child is absent after a certain number of times. How do we know maybe when we need to call? You may intensify the dose based on the student response. Thanks, Mona. Yes. So a change of dose is just doing more of the same. So we need ways of determining, is this the wrong fit? We need to change what we're doing, or do we just need to do more? That's our change of dose. Okay. Family contact, if we need to change our approach, right? If there's change of amount of contact we're doing, we don't see improvement. Thanks, Nancy. And then the change of practice is the what. Right. So say we have a group for, like, how do we know that we have families who we want to use our tier 2 intervention with? So it could be that we hold that evening event that we talked about having the event, and people don't come, right? So we wanted it to be a universal practice. That would be 80%. Do 80% of our families show up to that? If they don't, we need to maybe change what our core practices are.
Perfect.
Okay.
So I'm going to go back to the triangle slide for just a moment here so that people can grab a screenshot of this if they'd like.
We're also going to provide a link to a web page where we have these templates and some examples.
Mm-hmm. And we have a new improved tool for you to use today that has never before been used. So today's a very exciting day for all of us.
All right, let's do our parade.
Okay, so as we create plans for school and organizational contexts, we suggest using something called the parade strategy to self-assess the quality of the plan. So you've heard of the big rocks, those non-negotiables in your work. You're going to think of these as your big elephants. So without them, you're going to, instead of having this smoothly running system for family engagement, you're going to have chaos. So the first one is whether your plan is proactive and preventative. So we don't wait for problems. We want our Tier 1 strategies to inform families and support families in such a way that problems don't occur. So we are acting so that families and students have what they need to be successful. So in our plan, in the plan we just built, and we built it really fast. This isn't how you would build one as a school. As a school, you would, do some strategic planning over a longer amount of time. We wanted to give you a taste of it. So in our plan, we would have sat down and created this plan before we attempted to roll out a new attendance strategy at the beginning of the year. And so it's proactive and it's preventative because we thought about the fact that we really thought about what families would want and need. And we help to connect the dots about what is really important to families about attendance. It's not just following rules. It really deeply connects to their deep-seated desires for their children to be successful and for them to feel like they belong in school. So we're connecting to those, and that's the way that we can really be proactive. We're preventing problems by making sure that families really understand the rules. We're not just sending out a rule in a legal language that no one understands. That creates problems instead of preventing problems. Okay, so those are some of the ways we're doing it. We had other ways that build in there as well. The second letter, A, is for do all have opportunity? Our plan isn't for some families, it's for all families. And when some families are not engaging, our school community suffers. Instead of blaming families for not engaging, we need to strategize for how to differentiate our practices so that all families have the opportunity to support their child's learning in meaningful ways. So in our example, we did not ignore the fact that a large portion of any school population is going to have families that work at hours that are not the same hours that are the school's business hours. So we can't count on always having an adult at home who can ensure that a child is up in the morning or an adult there to pick up a child at the end of the day. So we're already planning for that ahead of time, and we're making sure that all families are supported in that way. Also, we might be thinking about not ignoring the fact that we have families in the school that speak other languages. Sometimes schools send out materials only in the languages that most of the families speak, and then they forget to check to make sure that they're sending things out in a language that every family speaks. So making sure that information is communicated in all ways. So that's some of the ways that we did that. Are all roles for families included? We made sure that we had ways that all families could be initiators and co-designers, that they would be not just receiving information from us, but also providing support to each other. We talked about that family, that there would be family leaders who would be available to help walk students to school, families who, maybe weren't able to take their kids to school in the morning. We talked about providing transportation. We talked about this Facebook support group for families who might be having more of a challenge getting their high schoolers out of bed in the morning, or families with kids who have illnesses that they might need some more support. We also talked about evaluators, how important it is to get feedback. The next one is it planned in advance? So remember, in advance of any new initiative, we're creating intentional plans for a multi-tiered system of support and family engagement. So this is really where we're thinking about, instead of rolling out something new and then waiting and seeing whether or not families catch on. We're really intentionally planning. We met that criteria. And then also, are there data-driven indicators? We talked about a number of days that would let us know that we need to intensify our strategies. We talked about data around if there's no improvement or inconsistent improvement, how we might use that. And then if there is family data that shows that practices aren't working, how we might recognize that. And then finally, are the strategies evidence informed? And so we've really looked at what might activate parents' motivations, what might benefit their knowledge and skills. We're thinking about things that are central and sustained and family-centered. And so in our example plan, we made sure that we really centered families at the heart of our plan rather than thinking about what we could do first. It's really important. Otherwise, you're just doing a lot of different things without a real clear strategy as why. And so that's where we made sure that we were evidence informed.
All right, so we are going to give you a little bit of a break right now. And we've also got a question for you. So I think, Kylie, we want to come back in about 8 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this will be, I know it says 10 on the screen. We're going to come back in 8, short break, and take care of yourself, get a snack, move a little, think about maybe what you're taking away from that first section, recenter your brain. And Hallie, we also had a request to go back to the page that had the request was for the one with the note-taking around the roles for families and the decision indicators.
Yep, absolutely. And if it would be helpful to everybody, I can make sure to update our slides on the Summit page with what we fill out at the end of this session. So I can ask Tom if he would update for that for us after the end of the day today.
All right.
If folks are willing to wait for that.
Yes. See you in a little bit.
Okay, I think that we are just getting ready to start back, and I know that a few of you are still coming back. You might be seeing a poll in front of you. But I did want to acknowledge that we got a question early on from Denise, who asked, how can MTSS be adapted with families who might be speakers of other languages, bilingual families, multilingual families, or any other families with any kind of challenges with communication with the school. And so Dr. Boone, I don't know if you want to take that question or if you would like me to forge on ahead. What do you think?
We'll forge on ahead and I'll jump into, we'll tag team this one.
Well, I think it's really a perfect model to be thinking about using with any families, but it really, because we are centering the needs and preferences of families, it really gets you to thinking about whether or not in your school community you might be wanting to address different forms of communication, whether that's, some families don't have access to internet, or whether you have lots of multilingual families. That might be a tier 1 strategy and a tier 1 consideration for your school, depending on your school community. It could be a tier 2 strategy or consideration. I want you to really understand that we shy away from talking about any one specific population or group or individual in any tier all the time without you'd really have to know your community. This is really community contextual. So I think that's what I would start with. Dr. Boone, what have I missed that you might be able to fill in?
No, I think you bring a great point. And, I'm sure that the folks here have seen this model, this multi-tier system model applied to, say, reading instruction or behavioral supports. And I've heard so many times folks say, your best tier 2 is a good tier 1. And what that means is if we're really planning for all, if we're really thinking about how can we reach everyone at our tier 1 level, then it starts to eliminate the need for lots of tier 2 interventions. So if providing interpretation, making what we give to families understandable from the get-go, that's just the way we do business for everything. If translation is always available, then that's our tier 1. And so translation and making things accessible to families, it's no longer an adaptation we make. it's how we do business. And so I think it's really applicable. And I would, I mean, we've seen so many wonderful examples too of districts that have just embraced that. And then this is how we do things. We don't communicate anything unless it's available to everyone in the languages of our families. So I think I think we kind of covered it there, but we think it's a great approach, and this is useful for that.
So in this next section, we are going to be practicing creating a plan. And so you get a great degree of choice in this next period of time. We are going to spend quite a bit of time practicing. You signed up for a workshop today, so you get to do a little bit of work. We know you are all, I want to just recognize that you are all very busy educators and leaders in your own spaces, and that you often don't have time to sit down and apply what you are learning. You attend sessions, and then boom, the session is done, and then your real life work begins immediately. And you really don't have time to try on, see if anything fits for your space. So we really wanted to, when we talked about the summit this year, we wanted to create time today to just really dive into trying out some of this. So you have some options. We're going to be practicing creating a plan for applying the MTSS approach to family engagement in your school community. If you've attended a session on this topic with us before, you know that sometimes we've had you use the same triangle note catcher that we just used. But we have found that while that looks nice for a PowerPoint slide and is nice when you're seeing a presentation, that can be challenging and maybe a little intimidating when you're just plunked into a breakout room. So for the first time ever, I'm a little nervous about this. We'll see how it goes. We are going to learn with you and see if a new planning guide might be a little bit more useful for people in the field. So Sarah just put a link in the chat. You can also scan. If you are on a laptop or computer, I really recommend clicking the link in chat. And that's going to take you to the materials. So I want to say that that's going to take you to a Google folder that is going to have a lot of rooms. So you're going to use that link if you decide to go to one of the breakout rooms. If you decide to work alone, you're just going to hang on for a second, and we're going to get you an individual link so that you can open up your own individual note catcher. So if you decide to go to breakout rooms, we're going to open those in a second. The first 9 rooms are organized by topic. So they are around 9 different topics. The topics are organized by grade level, and there's some topics that are social emotional learning, some topics around academics, and some topics around transitions. We know that transitioning students in and out of our school buildings, that's something that we all need to think about, and it's also something that families need to be really involved in. So you could choose one of those first 9 breakout rooms and go with other people who want to work on that topic with that grade level band, and you could work with people all over the country, all over the world. It could be very fun and exciting. You could meet new people. Also, I know that at least one school group has messaged Sarah and asked for her to make a breakout room for them. So if you would like to work as a group, as a school, you could message Sarah and she'll set up a breakout room for your school group. You are also welcome to stay in the main room and work independently if you prefer to work independently. That's also fine. So those are your main options. Let's see. And then we are going to be giving you 35 minutes in breakout rooms. So you are going to need to divide up roles. So you'll need a scribe. So the scribe should really be somebody who feels like they can access Google Docs and type in them pretty easily. It feels pretty savvy in Google Docs. You'll also need a timekeeper because you're going to need to take about 6 to 8 minutes per page. Now, I would suggest in the real world, you take more than 6 to 8 minutes per page to plan one of these really well, but let's try to pace it so that you do try to get through all parts of the plan. And you're going to open up that folder. In the folder, you're going to notice that there are different documents in there called Room 1, Room 2, Room 3. So if you happen to go to Room 1, you're going to open up the Room 1 document. And then Barbara and I are going to be popping into breakout rooms to check in on you. You can pretend we're not there. You can ask us a question. And you'll see one of the 2 of us in and out of your room. I think that's all of the instructions I have to give. So you're going to be able to choose your breakout room, which is a little bit different. So Sarah, why don't you go ahead and open breakout rooms so we can see how we would choose them. So I think at the bottom of your screen, you're going to have an option to choose breakout rooms. And you should see 20 rooms, and they are called with the topics. The first 3 rooms have to do with social emotional learning. We had to shorten that because there's a character limit. The next 3 rooms have to do with math. There's a little bit more of a specific scenario on the actual note catcher. Go ahead, Barbara.
No, I see people joining in. So
Yeah.
pick a topic that you want to try this on. You want to try out this planning with some other folks. So we've kind of talked about it, then we did it together. Now you're going to go through it yourselves, and we'll be in and out of your rooms supporting you, asking questions.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for participating in our breakout rooms and in working on your own individual plans. I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Boone.
All right. So we're going to thank you all. I don't know if you saw me. I was jumping around and listening in your groups. I think Hallie was too, and it was great to hear you were really working through it together. And it was great to also see people, from all different parts of Ohio and the country having conversations around similar things. So group 9, and I believe it's Mr. Conti, Henry was their scribe, is going to just very briefly describe what they were doing in group 9 and their plan. And so what we have up here is our parade. So as you're listening, we can think about those parade ideas, the proactive, preventative, all families. So that's in the chat, and then we will get to look at the plan. Can we display the group 9 plan?
Yeah, I'm going to make this bigger so that we can see it a little better.
With that, all right. Henry, you can take it from here.
Well, what a pleasure to be put on the spot. Thank you all so much. So as you can see, our prompt was a high school is piloting a college and career transition curriculum during 11th grade, planning and selecting the curriculum this year, fully implementing next year. The measurable goal for students we kind of came up with was that 90% of students will have chosen a path by the end of junior year, and 80% of students in grade 12 will be choosing it. We were kind of going back and forth, so those percentages don't make sense, but that was kind of if you could take a sense of the things we were going for, not necessarily the percentages, but 80% of students in grade 12 choosing courses reflective of their path. So that way, in their senior year, if they are interested in woodworking, they're taking wood shop to steel. I believe it was Dawn's idea to steal her example. And then increased graduation rates would obviously be a good metric to go by. How will students benefit from this situation? We feel like they'd be better prepared for life after high school, would be interested. It would make for students to be more interested and engaged. And obviously, the increased graduation rates would, we're looking for a systematic change here. Maybe they're the first in their family, and that sort of thing. So building a sense of pride. How will families benefit from this situation or initiative? They would be more focused during their first years of college and more goal-oriented, so less money spent, meaning they're not spending a 5th or 6th year because the first 2 years they didn't know what they wanted to do. Obviously, there would still be changes happening. So few kids know what they want to do. I was one of them when I entered college. Increased satisfaction in their students' education, more buy-in for real-life results, and understanding necessity and benefits of future planning. How will the school personnel benefit from this situation or initiative? We really had just that every teacher benefits from having engaged students and makes classroom management and planning easier.
Great.
Want me to keep going?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Okay, so tier 1, what personal motivators do all families have to engage in this situation initiative? All families want their students to be successful, reduces the stress levels in planning for post-secondary life, and fulfillment of personal goals. What knowledge and skills do all families bring to engage in this situation or initiative? We felt life experience. Parents know their students best. Their knowledge gained from careers of their family and friends that they can bring kind of to the table. What concerns and questions will all families have? How are you going to ensure a large variety of options will be covered? Keeping in mind that the trades need attention too. What if my student still doesn't know what they want to do upon graduation, and how will my student be evaluated? Mm-hmm. And 4, what information and resources will all families want? Kind of along the same lines, how will my student be evaluated? What's the course outline? When is it being taught? Where is it being taught? How and from whom are they getting these lessons? What assignments will there be? And what kind of backtracking on that and teaching what are the requirements to enter college, what tests they have to take, what courses they have to have completed, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, great.
Okay, part B. How can you provide opportunities for families to be the initiators? We felt like career fairs, taking a survey of the families and getting their thoughts on that, and informational workshops. 6, what opportunities can be provided for all families to share their knowledge and skills as co-designers and providers? Invite families and community members to share their career experience, especially the less common jobs, careers. We thought a Facebook community could work here so people can share their information that way, because sometimes getting people out of the house is difficult. Once I get home, I don't want to leave. And career fairs. How can opportunities be created to listen to families as evaluators, invite feedback directly to administrators, which can later be shared? Listening circles, this was an idea from Nancy, which was people come in and ask specific questions about the course, and those instructors or administrators would be there to answer those. We knew we were running out of time here, which is why the answers get less and less. So, how can information and resources be provided to families to support their role as receivers? We felt like emails, newsletters, social media posts, text alerts, Remind, Parent Square, all those kind of apps. Mm-hmm. And then part C, indicators for a change in tier, non-participation or low grades of students, high truancy, and I think that's about where we got.
Yeah, this is fabulous, and in such a short amount of time. So, and it's not like you all work together every day. You pulled it together really quickly. So thank you to Group 9 for kind of working through that. So if we think about, is it proactive and preventative? I heard you all thinking about all those years after graduation. You were also thinking ahead about what were families going to want to know. So you were thinking about the kids' futures. You were thinking about graduation, all sorts of things in this planning. So I would say you were preventing lots of questions, preventing a lot of anxiety. So a lot of questions. So you all have opportunity. In this one, it sounded like you were trying to make it accessible. I heard you saying things using different ways of communicating, like the Facebook group, like meetings and other things, so that, you didn't schedule one night on a Thursday from 6 to 8. You were thinking more broadly, and I think that's really important. And you're also thinking about different interests and needs. So you weren't just thinking, oh, everybody just has this side, right? You were broader with that. The roles for families, I think you were including families in those roles because you had different roles for them because they have job experience in lots of a variety of careers. They have different sort of expectations of their kiddos. They know their kids well. So I heard you using different roles for families in this, as co-designers as well. You had what did you call it? It wasn't a focus group.
Listening circles.
Listening circle.
Mm-hmm.
And then is it planned in advance? Yes, you were doing it. You're planning in advance. You were thinking ahead of time. And so I think that that's fabulous. You were and you were ready to go on to the next tier? Is it data driven? So I saw some real clear goals that you would have some clear data around for your students in particular. I think if I think back to what your goals were, so I think that's terrific. And you also included engagement, and I thought that was really neat that it wasn't just about kids getting credits, kids getting to graduation, but it was kids being engaged. And so I think that's terrific. So you've got, and that's a measurable thing as well. So, and then the strategies are evidence informed. So I think you were looking at, you were thinking about the different pathways for students, and that students don't all take one pathway. You're thinking about multiple ways of engaging. So I think that, you were landing on the evidence informed. And I think too, this might be one of those places where, there's a good program that has a lot of good results for kids around it, and you utilize that program, so there's different ways of getting around being evidence informed. I think this was terrific. So thank you all for Sarah and Nancy and Rosemary and Henry. So everybody, kudos to them. If you want to use the reaction button and give them an applause, or turn on your screen. Thank you, Henry. Thanks for being brave and willing when you were voluntold. We appreciate it.
And can I just say that this particular scenario is such an excellent example for where, when you get to those tier 3, when you have more time, right? We only gave you 35 minutes, which is not enough time for any kind of strategic planning. But when you get to tier 3, you can think about your family's strengths and assets that they bring. And you're going to have families that have careers that are highly specialized that your students would want to know about, and that they would be, really motivated to share those with students. That's not going to be every family in your school. That's not going to be 80% of families in your school. And so that's an excellent example of a tier 3 strategy that's not a deficits based, that you would want to make sure to write into that plan. So I really want to also give just kudos to all of the rooms. I got to be a fly on the wall sort of and see all of your plans being built, and to watch them. And I was just struck by how all of you really centered your family's needs, centered families' preferences, their motivators, and it was just exciting to see that. So thank you so much for joining us in that.
And it was exciting to see, you all didn't get to see this, but as we jumped from room to room, we heard our early childhood educators talking about preschool families, and we heard middle school teachers and elementary and high school, and it was just very cool to see it in action at all those levels.
Those of you who worked individually, I'm going to, in a moment, while you're working on reflection, I'll put my email in the chat, but I would love to see the plans that you created individually. If you would be willing to share those with me, I would love to see those. So we want to do a few things in closing, so please stay with us through to the very end, because we have a few exciting resources to share. And it's really important to take time to reflect. The reflection is what solidifies the learning as you walk away from our time together. So if you could, in the chat, think about answering, kind of completing this sentence. I used to think, but now I think about planning for family engagement, and so I will. So what are you going to do now because of this change in thinking? I used to think, but now I think, and so I will. You can put that in the chat. So Carrie's going to continue to spread the word that family engagement is your friend and to spread the love. Nancy says, I used to think schools needed to plan broadly, but now I think tiered planning is better. So I will encourage and support that. Thank you, Nancy. Yes, we're hoping that it's comprehensive, but also keeps you from feeling like you're doing everything. Sometimes I hear from my friends who are practitioners in schools that it can feel like you're trying to do everything. Hopefully this will give you a reason why you're doing some of the things. I will reflect more on the families and open myself to become more connected to them through this approach. Thank you, Rochelle. Not doing more, doing differently. Absolutely. Used to think I always had to reach as many families at the library as possible with a single program. Now you think it's okay if certain programs are targeted to a specific group, and consider that as we employ our limited resources. Good. Making sure that you're broadly adapting across all groups. I used to think that my parents of ELs needed the same information and resources, and now I need to think about their needs to really focus on what they need to support them for their children's academic success. Thank you, Carla. Surprised that hearing current universal practices should reach 80%, which seems high, but I need to look differently on what our current practices are and how we need to change. Yes, Nicole, I agree. Some of the things that we do in family engagement, we just do because we've always done them. But times are changing. Times are changing, so we may need to adapt some of those. Thank you. I'm going to let you keep rolling those in, and we're also going to tell you about a few new resources. Barbara, I'll turn this over to you.
Wonderful. So we have 2 resources to share with you if you would like to continue implementing this approach in your schools. So first, our website has a page dedicated to this approach. It includes a planning guide, a facilitator guide, and several examples. And Sarah is posting that link there in the chat. And secondly, we recently had an article published in Educational Leadership Magazine that shares more about how you can implement this model in your school or program. So if you want to read more about that, we'll also have the link to that in the chat. We really appreciate you taking the time to give your feedback about the summit today. So Sarah is putting a link in our to our feedback survey in the chat as well. We make improvements to our summit every year based on your ideas. So we really hope that you will give us that last little bit of time and respond to that survey. All right. We really thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask us, please don't hesitate to send us an email. You can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter and learn more about our current work. Finally, our website really is a treasure trove of resources for families, for schools at all levels. It includes projects for family engagement in early literacy, in the middle school years, and working with grandparents who are caregivers and more. So I hope you'll sign up for our monthly news and guidance. So you can go to our website, you can search for just any number of resources. We can also point you to them. So don't feel like you have to search on your own. Ask us a question, will help. Our news and guidance comes out every other month. It's a great way to stay connected. Every issue focuses on a particular topic, so it's like a good nugget of information. All the past editions are online, ready for you to use as well. So you'll be able to stay up to date with research-based family engagement practices and also hear news from our center. So we've got some links there about that. And I think that's really done. Hadley and I we are so thrilled that you were here in this session. And you know what? I've been watching the number of participants, and you're all still here. And that's really exciting for the end of a day on a Friday in particular. So we're glad that we know that that really is indicative of your investment in kids and their lives and in their learning and their development, and how you're willing to really do what it takes working together with families to really support them well.
Well, thank you, Dr. Boone and Hadley, for sharing your time and knowledge with us today. Please join me in thanking them in the chat. And I want to thank all of you today, too, for spending your day at the Ohio Family Engagement Leadership Summit. While we hope you can take some knowledge from today and apply it to your work tomorrow, the learning doesn't stop here. Be sure to be on the lookout for emails from the Ohio Statewide Family Engagement Center for follow-up opportunities to this summit. To ensure that we've met your needs and follow up appropriately, please take our survey at go.osu.edu/summit survey. And I can post that again in the chat here real quick. Thank you again for attending today, and please stay connected.
Mm-hmm. And remember, if you want contact hours, it's really important to complete the survey. Thank you, everyone.